On the morning of her 40th birthday, Irina Beregova awoke to a cold truth that pierced sharper than the October wind brushing against the window. The pale sunlight struggled through heavy curtains, casting ghostly shapes on the wooden floor. She had been lying there, motionless, eyes wide open, for over an hour. As always, she woke up at 5 a.m. 20 years of marriage had trained her to rise before anyone else in the house. 40, could it really be 40? Her fingers gently touched the corners of her eyes, where the first fine lines had begun to appear. Not deep yet, but visible especially when she smiled, though lately she rarely did. Next to her, Victor, her husband, and the head of the construction company Streugerant slept heavily. These days, he came home long after midnight, the scent of expensive cognac clinging to him, and by the time Irina placed his coffee on the table in the morning, he was already gone again. She slipped quietly out of bed, pulled on the silk robe Victor had given her last New Year's, a gift meant to make her look like a worthy wife of an important man, as he put it while handing her the branded box. She remembered smiling politely that day, suppressing the sinking feeling in her stomach. The kitchen was bathed in artificial light now, but it still felt cold. High-tech and sterile gleaming chrome, a marble countertop, a row of Japanese knives like trophies, a showcase of wealth, not a place for warmth. Not that there were many family meals to be shared. Their son Dima studied in the capital and rarely visited. Victor was always busy, and Irina, she cooked, cleaned, scheduled his meetings, responded to his business emails, drafted estimates, negotiated deals, all while being invisible in her own home. With a quiet sigh, she opened the refrigerator and began taking out ingredients for the dinner she had been planning for over a week. Tonight there would be guests, a couple of close friends, Victor's mother and father, some of his business partners. She had planned the menu down to the last detail: veal with rosemary, salmon in cream sauce, tartlets with red caviar, cheese canapes, and the cake, a chocolate raspberry masterpiece from the city's best bakery. Her one indulgence, her one secret joy for this day. Victor would probably scoff another waste of money, though he wouldn't think twice about spending thousands on a single bottle of whiskey for a client. She turned on the television. Morning news filled the background as she moved around the kitchen with swift, precise movements perfected through years of repetition. Her honors degree in economics had long been overshadowed by her mastery in hosting polished social evenings. Well, the little housewife's already at her post, came a voice from the doorway. Victor stood there, slim-fitting shirt hiding, the growing gut, expensive watch flashing on his wrist, hair perfectly styled to disguise the receding line. He looked like the man he wanted the world to see. "Good morning," Irina said with a soft smile. "Coffee's ready. It's your day, and you're slaving over the stove. Should have just ordered catering. I like cooking," she said quietly, almost to herself. "Right, anyway, I invited Mikhailov and his wife, also Andriy Savin's coming. You remember him? We studied together. Just got back from Sweden doing something with green energy or whatever." Irina froze. Andriy Savin, of course. She remembered, the brilliant, intense student with wild hair and a heart full of economic theories. Once he'd given her a copy of Keynes' The General Theory, annotated in his own handwriting. She still had it, hidden in a box with her university notes. "Doesn't ring a bell," she lied, turning toward the stove. "Oh, come on," Victor waved her off. "Maybe he's got something interesting to pitch. Though eco-types usually just want funding with no results." He sipped his coffee. "Perfect espresso, by the way. So, birthday girl, what's the plan for today?" "I'll finish dinner," Irina replied quietly. "Hairdresser's coming at 2. What Victor didn't know, what he'd never expect, was that this quiet day, this ordinary October morning, was about to mark the end of the life she'd spent years building, because someone was coming tonight who would look at her not as a cook, a planner, a quiet helper, but as a woman. And for the first time in years, she was ready to be seen. The tables still needed arranging. "Our little squirrel on a wheel," Victor smirked as he stood up. "I have a meeting. I'll be back by 7. Just in time for the guests." He kissed her cheek in a rushed, automatic gesture and left, trailing a faint hint of expensive cologne behind him. His phone lay forgotten on the kitchen counter just then. The screen lit up. A message appeared. Irina's eyes slid toward it, without meaning to. "I'm waiting for you at 12. Our place, it'll be hot. Yours, car." Something inside Irina snapped. The words dropped like a stone into her stomach, leaving behind a void of cold, echoing silence. So that's why he agreed to the birthday party. So he already had other plans for the day. Irina sank slowly into a chair. Strangely, there were no tears, just weariness, a numb, quiet realization that once again her life had gone off course. The screen lit up again. Victor came back into the room. "Forgot my phone. My head's full of holes. Today's so much going on." He grabbed it quickly and shut off the screen. "Yes, so much going on," Irina echoed, locking eyes with him. For a moment, Victor faltered under her stare, but only for a second. He quickly straightened. "All right then, see you tonight. And fix your hair properly, not those silly little curls. Ludmila Pavlovna will be here, and you know how she notices everything." The door shut behind him. Irina opened a drawer and pulled out a battered leather notebook, her journal. For the past 3 years it hadn't held confessions or feelings was a silent vault of business ideas, market insights, notes about Victor's clients, things she never dared say out loud. 40 years old. Morning, my husband is with his Christina or Carolina. Cassinia, our son, is off in the capital and, good for him, far from this house, where his mother has become nothing but a ghost of his father's shadow. My mother-in-law is coming tonight to offer her criticisms. And Irina tapped the pen against her lips, thinking. Then she finished the line with quiet resolve. And I will wear that blue dress today. The one Vitya thinks is too revealing. Too young. No more hiding. Let 40 be the beginning. By 7. The apartment gleamed. Long dining tables stood in the living room, set with the finest porcelain. Silver candlesticks cast warm glows across the snow-white tablecloth. A chocolate cake with raspberry glaze sat at the center, shimmering on its silver tray. Irina examined herself in the hallway mirror. The dark blue dress with bare shoulders framed her still slim figure perfectly. Her chestnut hair had been styled into soft, elegant waves. Subtle makeup and a pair of long earrings, her parents' gift, completed the look. I still look very much alive, she thought, almost surprised by her own reflection. The doorbell rang. It was Natasha, an old friend, a psychologist by trade and soul, holding an enormous bouquet of lilies and wearing a mischievous smile. Whoa, she whistled. Look at you, you're on fire tonight. If Vitya sees you, he'll drop dead. Think he'll even notice? Irina asked quietly, accepting the flowers and stepping aside. If he doesn't, he's a blind idiot, Natasha replied. Sharp as ever, she handed over a small, wrapped package. Open it when you're alone. Irina quickly hid the gift in her bedroom and returned to find Natasha already pouring champagne. To you, my dear. Natasha raised her glass, and to life's unexpected turns. They drank. The bell rang. Again, Victor's parents had arrived. Lydia Pavlovna, petite and polished to perfection, swept into the hallway, her sharp eyes inspecting every detail. Arushka, what's going on with your shoulders? She asked instead of offering a greeting. That neckline at your age. She paused, then gave a rare concession. Well, all right. One time is fine. It is your birthday after all. I brought Peking duck. Vitenka loves it. Nikolai Victor's father, a silver-haired physics professor with a gentle presence, stepped forward and hugged Irina. Happy birthday, Yarushka. Don't listen to all that nonsense. You look wonderful. Guests began to arrive one after another. Friends, Victor's colleagues with their wives. Everyone brought gifts, flowers, smiles. Irina floated among them with effortless grace, refilling glasses, serving hors d'oeuvres, keeping the conversations light and smooth. Just as always, Victor arrived shortly after 7:30. By then, the party was already in full swing. He walked in with a wide, confident smile, a picture of polished success. A perfectly folded pocket square peeked from his blazer, matching his tie. Impeccable, the kind of man who always arrived fashionably, late, cloaked in the excuse of business. Apologies for the delicious work, he said casually, kissing his mother's hand before scanning the room with the air of someone used to being admired. Double quotes. Well, look who's here. Misha, how many years has it been? Then his eyes landed on Irina. For the briefest moment, there was a flicker of surprise so fast, it almost disappeared. Ah, so tonight my wife decided to outshine everyone. He walked over and lightly placed his arm around Irina's shoulders. Just don't overdo it with the champagne. You still have to cut the cake. His laughter filled the room, and the guests joined in. Everyone except Natasha, who raised an eyebrow, skeptical. The doorbell rang again. That must be Andrei, said Victor. He said he'd be here by 8. Irina stepped out to open the door. On the threshold stood a tall man with silver just beginning to touch his temples. The thin-rimmed glasses added a quiet sharpness to his gaze, keen, unshaken. In one hand, a modest bouquet of white roses, in the other, a gift bag. Irina, he smiled. Happy birthday, you haven't changed at all. It was Andrei Savin, no longer the wild-haired student of her memories, but undeniably him. Something about his gaze made her instinctively pull back her shoulders, lift her chin. Hello, Andrei, she replied. Come in. Looks like tonight will be interesting. She had no idea how right she was. Andrei stepped into the apartment, his presence calm, assured, like a man who knew exactly where he belonged. He handed her the bouquet. White roses, I remember you said they symbolized new beginnings. You remembered that? Irina's voice softened as she took the flowers. Their fingers brushed. A small, sudden warmth traveled up her arm. Some things, he said simply, are worth remembering. Inside, Victor greeted his old classmate with exaggerated cheer, and a bear hug. Savin, after all these years. Our foreign guest, huh? Sweden, environmental science, ... He slapped Andrei's shoulder like they'd seen each other last week. So now you're plugging holes in every barrel, huh? This green, the business of yours. Sustainable development is the future. Victor, Andrei replied with a calm firmness, shaking his hand. And it seems you're thriving yourself. Absolutely. Stroy Garant is now one of the top 10 developers in the region, Victor said proudly. No false modesty here, it's all my doing. I've got drive, intuition, you know. How it is across the room. Irina, arranging the roses into a vase, flinched. 3 years ago it was her idea to pivot to suburban development while competitors were fighting over the city center. She calculated the risks. She drafted the plan. Victor had only laughed at the time, but in the end, he used it. Now it was his triumph, of course. Andrei nodded. But his gaze lingered on Irina. He saw something beneath her composed smiles, something fragile, barely hidden. The party swelled. Laughter echoed louder, glasses clinked more frequently, and Irina moved back and forth between the kitchen and the living room, ensuring everyone had enough to eat and drink. "Darling, have you seen the East Shore contract?" Victor suddenly called out across the room. "I want to show Mikhailov our terms." "It's in your office, red folder," Irina replied automatically. "But remember, clause 5.3 needs revision." Vershanin's lawyers rejected the current wording on the project deadline. The room went quiet for a second. Victor's face darkened. "What are you talking about? What lawyers?" "That clause is fine. We finalized it last week." Irina bit her lip. She had just spoken to Vershanin's team 2 days ago. Victor had been too busy to handle it. But now, clearly, he'd forgotten. "My mistake," she said softly. "Of course it is," Victor chuckled, turning back to the guests. "My lovely wife sometimes imagines she knows something about business. But really, what could a housewife know?" Lydia Pavlovna nodded approvingly. "Vitenka always says a woman's job is to keep the home warm, not meddle in a man's affairs. And he's right." Guests exchanged polite smiles, unsure how to respond to the sudden chill in the air. Only Natasha clenched her fists, her knuckles pale with tension. And Andrei, he never looked away from Irina as if he could see straight through her silence. "By the way," he said, his voice steady, "in Sweden, over 40% of leadership roles are held by women, and the companies are all the better for it." "Well, that's your Europe," Victor scoffed, waving a hand. "Here, we have our own way. Right, gentlemen." Several men offered a hesitant nod of support, while others busied themselves with their plates, pretending not to notice the tension. Then suddenly, breaking the silence, Nikolai Petrovich spoke with a nostalgic smile. "My little Irina, so clever. She graduated with honors in economics. I remember you, Vitya, even copied her coursework." "Dad, really?" Victor winced. "That was 100 years ago. Theory's one thing, but real business, it's a whole different beast." Irina quietly slipped out to the kitchen, her chest tightening with a rush of emotion she couldn't quite suppress. She opened the fridge and took out the cake. Her hands, though practiced, trembled slightly as she began placing 40 slender, elegant candles on top, one for each year of her life. 40 years. Have I wasted them all? The question stabbed through her mind like a silent scream. "Need a hand?" came a voice behind her. She turned. It was Andrei. He stood there, calm and steady, his presence strangely grounding. Irina forced a smile. "No thanks, I've got it." "I know," he said simply. "You always do, even when no one else sees it." Their eyes met. In his, she saw no pity, no condescension, just understanding, and something else. Something that made her heart ache in a way she hadn't felt in years. Suddenly, Victor's phone buzzed loudly on the counter. The screen lit up. Kasyusha calling. Irina caught a glimpse just as Victor burst in. "There you are," he muttered, snatching the phone and silencing the call with a swift tap. "What are you two doing?" "Preparing the cake," Andrei answered calmly. 40 candles. Quite a sight. "Exactly," Victor said sharply. "And my wife can manage just fine on her own." He placed his hand on Irina's shoulder, gripping harder than necessary. "Ira, bring the cake. Our guests are waiting." As Andrei exited, Victor leaned in, his voice low and sharp. "Were you flirting with him?" "On my birthday." Irina looked up at him, her voice quiet but clear. "My birthday to Vitya, and no, I wasn't flirting. We were talking." She walked out holding the cake like it weighed 1,000 memories. In the living room, guests gathered around as the candles came to life, casting a warm, golden glow on their faces. Victor raised his glass, beaming, "A toast to my wife. To my darling homemaker who cooks so well and keeps the house so cozy." Something inside Irina cracked. 10 years of managing his finances, negotiating contracts, bringing in clients, and still, to him she was just the one who fussed around the house. "To your health," Irina said. Andrei, his voice steady as his gaze met hers. "And to all your talents. All of them." In that moment, Irina felt it. Something had shifted, something real. She looked around, the cake, the flames, the guests, her husband, laughing, animated, never noticing that she hadn't sat down 40 years. The thought echoed inside her. "It's time to decide how I want to live the rest of them." She took a deep breath and blew out the candles. Her wish was simple: find the strength to change. The evening wore on. Guests broke off into quiet clusters, conversations soft and tinged with the weariness of contentment. Laughter floated from one corner, idle chatter from another. Victor remained at the center, loud, confident, glass of whiskey in hand, boasting to colleagues about an upcoming luxury development project. "I decided. I achieved. I came up with the idea," he repeated, like a mantra. Irina moved among the guests, clearing plates, her hands working automatically while her mind wandered far. "Why do I stay silent?" she asked herself. Why do I nod when he steals credit for the penthouse idea I found in that real estate journal? Why do I smile when he mocks me for joining a business conversation as if I don't belong? Let me help. Natasha's voice pulled her back. The present. Her friend took the stack of plates from her hands. How are you holding up? Irina shrugged. What choice do I have? Together they made their way to the kitchen. Once out of earshot, Natasha set the dishes in the sink and turned to her. I'm saying this as your friend, not a psychologist. Stop tolerating this IRA. 10 years, and he still treats you like nothing. I don't want Tisha to hear, Irina said nervously, glancing at the door. Let him hear, Natasha snapped, refusing to lower her voice. By the way, did you open my gift? No, not yet. Haven't had a minute. Then do it now. Natasha nodded toward the bedroom. Inside. It was cool and still. Moonlight spilled across the bed, where a small parcel wrapped in red paper waited. Alone, quiet, almost trembling with promise, Irina unwrapped the small package and found a delicate brooch in the shape of a butterfly. Its wings made from real amber. It's beautiful, she whispered, gently tracing the smooth surface of the stone. It's a symbol, Natasha said, her eyes serious. A butterfly, frozen in amber, trapped beauty. For millions of years it could have flown, but instead, it's locked forever in a gorgeous, lifeless prison. Like you, Ira, she added quietly. A brilliant, beautiful woman trapped in a gilded cage they call a marriage to Victor. Natasha, don't start, Irina said, her voice low. No, I will start, and finish. You used to dream big, starting your own business, pursuing your master's degree, teaching economics. And now you're Mrs. Beregov, arranging appetizers and smiling politely when your husband mocks you in front of guests. He's not always like that, Irina replied automatically. Yes, he is, Natasha threw up her hands. Your son's grown up and lives his own life. Your in-laws never supported you, especially that venomous mother-in-law of yours. So why do you keep pretending? For what? The occasional expensive trinket he throws at you like a tip every 6 months. Irina said nothing. She turned the brooch over in her hand, lost in thought. Deep down, Natasha was right. But how could she explain the cold, paralyzing fear of change? Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Moments later, the door creaked open. Victor stood in the doorway, his face already flushed from alcohol. So this is where you're hiding, he slurred, leaning against the doorframe. Guests are waiting, and the hostess decides to gossip with her little friend. We're just coming, Irina smiled politely, quickly slipping the brooch into her pocket. What was that? Victor nodded toward her hand. Just a gift from Natasha. Show me. His tone turned firm. He extended his hand, not as a request but a command, reluctantly. Irina pulled out the brooch, a butterfly. Victor scoffed, examining it. How childish. And you've got a whole box full of trinkets I gave you. Waste of money, Natasha. He cast a mocking glance at Natasha. It's amber, actually, she replied coldly, and it's symbolic. Symbolic. Victor laughed, too loudly. Of course it is. You're a psychologist after all. What's the symbolism this time? A butterfly in amber, Natasha said calmly, meeting his eyes. Beauty trapped in a cage. Do you understand what I mean? I understand that you're trying to mess with my wife's head again, Victor snapped, his smile vanishing. Go to the living room. Your precious Andrei is about to leave. The comment was directed at Irina when she returned to the living room. Most guests were already saying their goodbyes. She walked up to Andrei, who stood near the front door, pulling on his coat. Leaving already? She asked, surprised by the quiet regret in her voice. Sadly, yes. Early flight to Stockholm tomorrow, he said with a soft smile. Sorry I couldn't stay longer. No, don't apologize. Thank you for coming. She extended her hand. But instead of a handshake, Andrei gently kissed her cheek. Happy birthday, Ira, he whispered. 40 is just the beginning. Something stirred inside her, subtle, but real. His words, his gaze, they held something more than polite warmth. There was genuine interest, unspoken and sincere. He slipped a small business card into her hand. I'll be back in 2 weeks. If you ever want to grab a coffee or just talk about anything, call me. Before she could respond, Victor approached. Save and have a safe trip. And remember, if you ever need connections in construction, just say the word. I'll handle everything. Andrei shook his hand. Thanks, Vitya. Actually, I do plan to expand business here. Looking for smart people, especially in finance, people with instinct. We'll find whoever you need. Victor grinned, slapping his shoulder. Just give me a call. Will do. Andrei cast one last glance at Irina and walked out the door. By midnight, the apartment was empty. Even Natasha, despite Irina's pleas to stay, had left in a taxi, though not without one last glance toward Irina's pocket, where the amber butterfly now rested. Victor, overheated from liquor and the sound of his own voice, sprawled on the living room couch, unaware of the silent storm gathering behind Irina's calm eyes. The evening turned out quite decent. Victor stretched, unbuttoning the top buttons of his shirt. See? I know how to throw a party, don't I? Irina was clearing the glasses, avoiding his gaze. It was me who threw the party, Vitya. I cooked, set the table, invited the guests. Oh, come on, he waved dismissively, as if hosting a dinner was some trivial task. But I created the atmosphere, he grinned, entertaining the guests. Everyone laughed at my jokes. Did you notice? Especially the ones about me. Irina thought bitterly, but only said aloud, of course Vitya and that Savin guy. Victor swirled the last drops of whiskey in his glass thoughtfully, acting like he was some big shot with his Sweden connections. I'm looking for smart financiers, he mocked his former classmate. Well, I have pros in accounting who'd outsmart him any day, Irina said quietly, feeling invisible yet sharp. I am your entire accounting department, Vitya, she thought, but didn't say. By the way, why did you go on and on about that contract in front of him? Victor asked suddenly, narrowing his eyes. Just wanted to show off how smart you are, he accused, smirking. I just answered your question. Irina's irritation started rising like a storm inside her. She was aware of the real problem with the contract. There is no problem, Victor slammed his fist on the table. You're meddling where you don't belong, always trying to act smarter than me. I'm not trying to act smarter, she whispered. I'm just stating facts. The lawyers from Version indeed disagreed on the deadlines, and if they missed them... Victor stood up, swaying slightly. You think I don't see how you were batting your eyes at that Swedish upstart? How you hung on every word of his 40% of CEOs in Sweden are women? She shot back calmly. Yeah, Vitya, are you drunk? Irina stepped back. I'm sober enough to see my wife flirting with an ex-classmate right before my eyes, he snarled, moving closer. The smell of whiskey thick around him. I think I didn't notice how he looked at you, how you whispered to each other in the kitchen. We were just talking. She tried to keep calm, but her heart pounded in her throat. They were just talking, Victor mocked. About what? How ungrateful I am. No wonder your Natasha keeps whispering nonsense in your ear. And now Savin's joined the chorus. He grabbed his half-empty glass and drained it in one gulp. Listen carefully, Ira. His voice dropped to a deceptively quiet tone. You're a housewife, my wife. Your job is to keep things cozy and support me. Everything else, my business, is my problem. That upstart Savin, that's my problem too. Got it? No, Vitya, I don't. The words slipped out before she could think twice. He stared at her as if she'd suddenly lost her mind. I said, I don't get it, she repeated quietly but firmly. For 10 years I've managed your accounting, drawn up contracts, dealt with suppliers when you were too busy, and all I hear back is stupid, useless housewife. Victor looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Is that the alcohol talking or your crazy friend's advice? He sneered. Or maybe that sweet has clouded your head. It's me talking, Vitya, Irina said, her voice steady. I'm Irina Bergova, the woman who just turned 40 today and realized she's been living someone else's life for the last 10 years. She surprised herself with the firmness in her voice. Victor seemed surprised too. He blinked, as if trying to clear his head, then his face twisted with rage. No, it's definitely Savin, he growled. I saw how he looked at you, how he buttered you up. He'd always pretended to be mild-mannered but was ready to snatch whatever wasn't nailed down. What does Andrei have to do with it? Irina asked wearily. It's between us, Vitya, between us everything is fine. He cut her off. He's the one messing with your head, and don't you dare talk to him again. Got it? No coffees, no chats. You're my wife. Don't yell, Irina frowned. The neighbors will hear. Don't care. Victor grabbed the vase of flowers from the table and hurled it against the wall with a crash. Irina jumped at the sound. Shards scattered across the room. Water and flowers spilled over the floor. Among the wreckage lay white roses, the very ones from Andrei. That's what I think of your Savin and his roses, Victor snarled, kicking the nearest flower. If I see you talking to him again, you'll regret it. He spun around, staggering as he headed toward the bedroom, brushing past a small table cluttered with photos. Frames tumbled to the floor. One shattered their wedding picture. Irina slowly sank to her knees amid the shards and flowers. Her hands trembled as she gathered the broken glass. Miraculously, one rose remained intact, white with a barely opened bud, a symbol of new beginnings. Something pricked in her pocket. The amber butterfly brooch. Irina pulled it out and stared long at the silhouette, frozen forever in golden resin. Butterfly in amber, she thought, beauty trapped. But I don't want to be that butterfly. I refuse to stay trapped for even one more minute. In the bedroom, Victor snored loudly. Irina sat among the fragments of her old life, knowing the decision was already made. 40 wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. The morning after her 40th birthday greeted Irina with a pounding headache and a buzzing silence in the apartment. She opened her eyes, confused for a moment, lying on the couch in the living room, wrapped in a blanket around her were the remains of yesterday's chaos. Shards of a vase she hadn't yet cleaned, crumpled napkins, scattered flowers. The clock showed just past 9. Victor was gone off to work without waking her. Over the years it had become normal. She rose slowly, wincing at the throbbing temple. She'd drunk a little the night before, but stress and lack of sleep had taken their toll. Something jostled in her pants pocket, the butterfly brooch, a gift from Natasha. Irina took it out and set it gently on the coffee table. First, she went to the bathroom and stood long under the hot shower, letting the water wash over her face as if trying to rinse away not just physical fatigue, but the ache gathering in her soul. Wrapped in a fluffy robe, She approached the mirror and looked deeply at her reflection. I'm 40, she thought, tracing the fine lines at the corners of her eyes. And who am I? Wife of businessman Berigov, a housewife with an economics degree earned with honors. A butterfly trapped in amber. In the kitchen, a note was stuck to the fridge with a magnet. You overdid it and talked nonsense. We'll talk tonight. Clean up this mess. The mother's coming at noon to help with the cleaning. Irina crumpled the note and tossed it into the trash. We'll talk tonight. As if there was really anything left to say. As if she didn't already know how it would go. Victor would pretend nothing happened. Maybe offer a condescending apology for the broken vase he himself had once bought. Then everything would go back to the way it was. But now, something inside her rebelled against that script. Her phone rang, cutting through her thoughts. Natasha. Hey, birthday girl. How are you? Fine. Irina answered automatically, then corrected herself. No, not fine. Vitya threw a fit after the guests left, broke a vase, knocked over the photo table. Oh God, he didn't touch you. Genuine worry in Natasha's voice. No, it didn't get that far. Irina hurried to assure her, just shouted and went to bed, left a note saying I overdid it, and talked nonsense. His mother's coming soon to help clean up. God, that old witch is actually coming. Natasha didn't hide her feelings about her friend's mother-in-law. Listen, why don't you leave before she arrives? Come over to my place, we'll have coffee, talk. Irina hesitated. Before, she would have refused, finding 1,000 reasons to stay and deal with the fallout of yesterday, but today something had changed. You know what? That's a great idea, she said firmly. I'll be there in an hour. Quickly dressing and grabbing her purse, Irina paused at the door. She needed to at least sweep up the glass so her mother-in-law wouldn't have another excuse to criticize. She went back, tidied the most obvious mess, and was about to leave when her eyes caught the white rose, miraculously still fresh from yesterday. Carefully, she picked up the flower, trimmed its slightly wilted stem, and placed it in a small vase filled with water. Then, pinning the butterfly brooch to her jacket, she stepped out of the apartment with quiet determination. Natasha's apartment was nestled in an old neighborhood, a 5-story building without an elevator, but Irina always loved its cozy charm. Bookshelves stretched up to the ceiling, bright pillows decorated the sofa, and the scent of coffee and cinnamon filled the kitchen. Finally, the door swung wide open before any knock. I thought you might have changed your mind, Natasha said, pulling her friend into a warm embrace and leading her to the kitchen. The table was already set for a late breakfast: fresh buns, jam, fruit, and a steaming pot of coffee. You haven't changed at all since college, Irina smiled, sinking into a chair. Have you changed? Natasha studied her closely. It's not about looks. You used to have fire in your eyes, passion. You dreamed of turning the whole economy upside down. Irina's smile faded, tinged with sadness. We were so naive. We thought once we got our diplomas, the world would be at our feet. The world is still at your feet, Natasha said firmly. You just chose to see it through Victor's achievements. They fell silent, sipping the fragrant coffee. I see you're wearing the brooch, Natasha said, nodding toward the amber butterfly pinned on Irina's lapel. She touched it absent-mindedly. Yes, it makes me think about not wanting to be that butterfly, beautiful, but frozen forever. I want to fly again, Natasha. Like before. Her friend's face lit up. Irina, you have no idea how happy that makes me. You know how many years I waited for you to wake up from this hypnosis? 10. Irina chuckled bitterly. About as many as I've been married to Victor, roughly. Natasha's voice softened. At first, you liked the role of the successful businessman's wife. Then you justified it with caring for your son. The last few years you've just been afraid of change, and now, Irina whispered, now I'm afraid it'll be too late. Irina admitted. I'm 40, Natasha, who needs me with an outdated diploma. 10 years, I was just Victor's wife. Stop that. Natasha slammed her palm on the table. You're a smart, beautiful woman with real business experience. The fact that it's not on some official record means nothing. You know the market, you can analyze, you understand finance, but who will believe me? Well, for example, you're Andrei Savin, Natasha teased, narrowing her eyes mischievously. Don't look at me like that. I saw how he looked at you yesterday, and how you looked back. A flush rose in Irina's cheeks. Don't be ridiculous. We're just old acquaintances. Studied together, and he suggested coffee when he returns from Stockholm, Irina reminded her. He said he's looking for talented financiers, and you, by the way, have a red diploma in economics and 10 years of experience. Irina absent-mindedly traced the rim of her coffee cup. It's not that simple, Natasha. I have a husband, an apartment, a settled life. A husband who calls you a silly goose on your own birthday. An apartment where you feel like the help. A settled life where no one respects or values you. Natasha shook her head. Sorry, but that's not life. That's just existing. Irina's phone suddenly rang sharply. The screen flashed her mother-in-law's name, Lydia Pavlovna. She answered. Hello, Irina, I'm outside your door. You're not opening? Her mother-in-law's voice was sharp. Vitya said. Are you home? Irina lied. Sorry, I went out for groceries. Casting a guilty glance at Natasha, she should have warned her I was stuck in traffic for an hour. Driving here to help you, came the heavy sigh. When will you be back? I don't know exactly. Irina felt a strange relief wash over her. I have things to do in the city, maybe by evening. There was a pause. What things in the city? Her mother-in-law sounded genuinely shocked. Vitya said after the party the place was a mess and needed cleaning. I've taken care of the essentials, Irina said firmly. The rest can wait until evening. Fine, I'll tell Vitya. You weren't home. The threat was clear in her voice. Hope your errands are worth it. The call ended. Irina looked at her phone, then raised her eyes to Natasha. What am I doing? She whispered. Vitya is going to be furious. Natasha squeezed her hand. For the first time in ages, you're doing what you want, not what your husband or his mother expect. And yes, Vitya will be angry, but maybe it's time to stop fearing his wrath. Irina stayed silent, but inside a storm was raging. Everything Natasha said was true. For years she had bent to Victor's will, afraid of his displeasure, measuring every step against his expectations. And where had it brought her? At 40, feeling empty, unfulfilled, and unwanted. You know, she said slowly, I think this is the first thing I've truly done for myself in a long time, and it's not as scary as I thought. Natasha smiled. This is just the beginning, friend. Just the beginning. The phone rang again. This time it was Victor. Irina glanced at the screen, then at Natasha, and decisively pressed decline. Wow, Natasha clapped softly. I see it now, the butterfly is starting to spread its wings. Irina smiled, but inside, a knot tightened at the thought of the conversation to come with her husband. Still, that wasn't what mattered now. What mattered was that she finally tasted freedom's more, but hers. What will you do next? Natasha asked. Irina thought for a moment. Ignore his calls. I could do that all day, but in the evening. I'll still have to go home, face him, or maybe not. I don't know, she admitted honestly, but I don't want to go home, at least. Not today. Stay here, Natasha offered immediately. The couch folds out, the sheets are clean. Stay with me. Think without pressure. Irina nodded gratefully. Thank you. I'll take you up on that. Then Natasha gave a sly smile as she pulled out her phone. Look what I found. She showed Irina the screen. A company page for Aklifa with a job opening for a financial analyst who knows the Russian market. Experience, 5 years minimum. Willingness to travel. That's Andrei Savin's company. Natasha winked. I googled it this morning. They have offices in Stockholm, Helsinki, and now opening one in Russia. Guess who I think fits this? Perfectly. Irina stared at the screen, stunned me. No way. I don't have official experience. But you have brains and real skills, Natasha fired back. And a personal connection with the founder. Here, his business card. She nodded toward Irina's purse. What's stopping you from calling him fear? Irina whispered. Normal human fear. Natasha smiled softly and covered her hand with hers. You know the difference between a butterfly trapped in amber and a living butterfly. The living one's scared too, but it still spreads its wings and flies. Irina looked down at the amber butterfly brooch pinned to her jacket, frozen forever. That was what she'd been for the last 10 years. But now, something inside her was stirring, awakening, preparing to take flight. All right, she said firmly. I'll call him. Not now, but soon, once I know what to say. The phone rang again. A third time. This time it was her son Dima. Mom. His voice was anxious. Are you okay? Dad called, said you disappeared after last night's party. Irina sighed. Only a few hours since she'd decided to live for herself, and Victor had already sent heavy artillery her son's call. I'm fine, sweetheart, just spending the day with Natasha. Dad doesn't know. Dima's voice betrayed confusion. He doesn't know, Irina repeated calmly. I'm an adult, Dima. Sometimes I need space for myself. There was a pause. Then Dima hesitated. Did something happen? Between you and Dad? Irina closed her eyes. How do you explain to your grown son that his mother just realized she'd wasted her best years in a marriage where she wasn't valued? Nothing serious, honey. Just a little misunderstanding. Everything will be okay. After hanging up, she caught Natasha's eyes. Lying to my son feels awful, Irina admitted. You didn't lie, her friend said. You said everything would be okay, and it will be. Just maybe not the way everyone's used to. Irina nodded thoughtfully. Just then her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared. Good afternoon, Irina. This is Andrei Savin. I wanted to thank you once again for last night. I'm flying to Stockholm but would love to meet when I return in 2 weeks. Hope you didn't throw away my business card. Her heart skipped a beat. She glanced at the message, then at Natasha, and for the first time in a long while, a genuine smile lit her face. You know, she said softly, I think I'm starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything will be all right, Irina. Spent 3 days at Natasha's, 3 days of relative peace filled with long talks over tea, slow walks through the crisp autumn park, and late-night reflections on the fold-out couch. Victor called constantly. At first, his voice was sharp, with threats, then it softened into desperate pleas to come back. She read his messages but replied briefly. I need time to think. Her mother-in-law sent lengthy lectures about family values and the suspicious friends who destroy marriages. Irina deleted those without reading them to the end. On the 4th day, Irina decided it was time to return home. Not because she'd forgiven Victor or changed her mind, She simply needed to collect some belongings and, most importantly, face her husband in person. Are you sure? Natasha asked, anxiety shadowing her eyes as Irina packed her bag. Maybe meet him somewhere neutral like a cafe. No, Irina shook her head. At home, it'll be calmer. You're lying, Natasha said bluntly. At home, you'll have less chance to leave if he starts pressuring you. You know how he plays those games, Irina sighed. Natasha was right. Victor was a master at twisting situations, mixing guilt and flattery to get what he wanted. He almost always won. But, not this time. I've made up my mind, Natasha, Irina said firmly. I want to try living differently without constantly feeling like I'm not enough. Without hiding my thoughts and desires. Without fearing to say what I think. Natasha hugged her tightly. I believe in you, and remember, no matter what that happens, my door is always open. She pulled a small bundle from her pocket. Here, a spare key to my apartment just in case. The friends embraced once more, and Irina headed home. Approaching the door, her heart pounded fiercely in her throat. 3 days ago, she had fled almost in haste. Now she returned a different woman. She didn't have to ring the bell. It seemed to sense her presence and opened the door himself. He looked unusually disheveled, stubble shadowing his cheeks, wearing a cozy sweater instead of his usual shirt. Ira, he said, stepping forward, but she raised a warning hand. Let's talk calmly. The apartment was spotless, not a trace of the broken vase, no stain on the floor, not a single crumpled napkin. Irina guessed her mother-in-law had been thorough, or maybe Victor had hired a cleaning service. They moved to the kitchen, the neutral ground of the house. Irina put on the kettle, her movements automatic. So what was all that about? Victor asked quietly, sinking into a chair. 3 days without a word. Do you even realize what I went through? And do you realize what I went through? She turned, resting her hands on the countertop. For 10 years I've lived in the shadow of your ego, Vitya. 10 years. Pretending not to notice your affairs, your neglect, your constant jabs at my worthlessness. What affairs, what neglect? He spread his hands dramatically. I've always held you on a golden pedestal. You're mixing things up. She quoted his note coldly. Stupid goose, useless housewife, a golden pedestal you say. Victor winced. They're just words. He snapped in the heat of the moment. Don't give them meaning. That's exactly the problem, Vitya. Irina gave a sad, distant smile. For you, they're just words. But for me, they're a life I've been living day after day, slowly disappearing into your ambitions. The kettle clicked off, but neither of them noticed. What do you want? Victor finally asked, the silence thick between them. Don't want you to say you're sorry, Irina said softly. Fine, I'm sorry, I was wrong. It won't happen again. She shook her head. No, Vitya, I want more than that. I want respect. I want my work to be acknowledged. My contribution to this business. I want to be your partner, not your assistant. I want, oh, so that's what this is about. Victor slammed his palm on the table. You want to play the businesswoman now, read too many of those glossy magazines? Or did your little friend Natasha plant this nonsense in your head? Tell me, do you really believe Stroy-Garant would have succeeded without my connections and charm? Probably not, Irina replied calmly. But without my financial planning, without my tax strategies, without me handling the suppliers, while you were off chasing yet another Kasushi, it wouldn't have lasted either. Victor stared at her like he was seeing a stranger. His face darkened, red creeping up his neck. Oh, I get it now, he hissed. It's Savin, that smug Swede's been filling your head with dreams, promising you the world. And you, like a naive little girl, believed him at your age. Irina chuckled, not even bothering to hide it. This isn't about Andrei, this is about us. Our marriage. Our marriage. Victor shot to his feet. We have a perfect marriage. Everyone envies us. You live in a luxurious apartment, drive a fancy car, wear designer clothes. That's just the surface, Vitya, Irina said wearily. What about what's underneath? Have you ever once asked me what I dream about, what I really want? Do you even care how I feel? Victor sank back into his chair, defeated, his bravado crumbling, his shoulders slumped, his voice low and uneven. Ira, you're scaring me. This conversation, it's not right. I don't get it. What do you want? More money. I'll give you a card with no limit. More time, I'll come home early. A vacation. We'll go anywhere. Just stop this. For a fleeting moment, Irina felt the familiar pull to retreat, to soften the blow, to make peace. But then she remembered the amber butterfly brooch she pinned to her blazer that morning right after leaving Natasha's place. A butterfly, forever frozen. Beautiful but dead. I want a divorce, Vitya. Her voice was quiet but unshakable. He stared at her in disbelief. You've lost your mind. Divorce. After 10 years together, we have a life, friends, a business. Exactly, she said, finally pouring herself some tea and sitting across from him. 10 years of being a shadow to your brand, your image. And I've decided I'm done. Victor was boiling again. And what about me? Did you even stop to think? My reputation? The company? Irina took a sip of tea. It was hot, grounding. Oddly enough, the fear she had carried into this conversation had all but disappeared. Only a soft sadness remained. "No, Vitya, I didn't think about you," she answered honestly. "For the first time in years, I thought about myself. And you know what? It feels freeing." Her calm tone cut deeper than any scream ever could. It unsettled him more than accusations. "This is all because of Savin, isn't it?" Victor started again. "What did he promise? A job you think you can make it? You don't know anything about real business. You've got no experience, no degree." "I have a red diploma in economics and 10 years of experience," Irina replied firmly. "And this has nothing to do with Andrew. I don't even know yet where I'll work. Maybe I'll start something of my own. But I do know this: why I won't live in your shadow anymore." Victor's mask of anger cracked, replaced by something unexpected pleading. His voice softened, eyes glossier. "Roshka, listen, I've been a fool, I know it. I've said awful things, taken you for granted. But we're a family, we have a son. Let's fix this. I'll change. I promise." But it was too late. Something inside her had already shifted and there was no turning back. "You'll be officially working for the company, getting a salary. We'll define your position." Irina felt a lump form in her throat. How many times had she fallen for promises like these before? How many times had she hoped things would be different, that this time would be real? But now, she saw it all with piercing clarity. Nothing would ever change. Victor would always be Victor. "No," she said firmly. "I've made my decision," she continued. "And it's better if we handle this like adults without drama or filth. We have a son. For his sake, we need to keep things civil." Victor stood up abruptly, pacing the kitchen, running his hands through his hair. "If you leave me for Savin, I'll never forgive you in the business," he added sharply. "You know, none of the systems work without your mind behind them." Irina gave a sad smile. "So you finally admit I was useful?" "I always knew that," Victor snapped, a sudden fire in his voice. I thought you already understood. I didn't think I needed to say it." "Well now," she said quietly, "I understand something else." She finished her tea, placed the cup down carefully. "Vitya, I came to tell you I'm moving out. I'll stay with Natasha for now. Then I'll rent a place. We'll divide the property legally. No fights." Victor froze in the middle of the kitchen, staring at her with open panic in his eyes. "You're actually leaving," he said, voice trembling. "Just like that? After everything between us?" "Not just like that," she whispered. "This is the hardest decision of my life, but it's one I have to make." She stood and walked to the bedroom. It was time to pack. Just the essentials: documents, a few clothes. Victor followed her closely, first pleading, then threatening, desperate to make her change her mind. But Irina moved calmly, methodically, as if the choice had already been lived through many times in her mind. Then, her eyes landed on the bedside table. A small glass vase stood there. Inside it, a single white rose, the same one she had rescued after their last fight. It had begun to wilt, but it still held a quiet, dignified beauty. "You kept it?" she asked, surprised. Victor hesitated. I don't know. Maybe my mom or the cleaner." Irina gently picked up the vase. "I'm taking it with me." "As a symbol?" Victor asked bitterly. "Of what?" "A new beginning," she said simply. Once the suitcase was closed, Irina stood still for a moment, her gaze sweeping over the room she had spent so many years in. Strangely, she felt no regret, no nostalgia, only a soft sadness and a quiet anticipation of what lay ahead. "Does Dima know?" Victor asked, standing in the doorway. Irina shook her head. "I'll call him today. And I hope you won't try to turn him against me." "What do you take me for?" Victor said, offended. But then his voice softened. "Maybe you should wait a day or two. Think it through. Don't make a rash decision." "I've been thinking for 10 years, Vitya," she said gently. "And my answer won't change." She picked up the suitcase and walked to the door. On the threshold, she paused and looked back. "I'll call about the documents. And forgive me if you can." The door closed behind her, shutting out the life she once knew. On her pocket was the key to Natasha's apartment. On her coat lapel, a soft amber brooch caught the light. And in that moment, Irina didn't feel like a pinned butterfly. She felt alive, ready to fly into the unknown. 2 weeks passed in a haze. Irina had moved into a small rented studio, modest, but full of light in a quiet new neighborhood. Natasha helped with the move, and Irina found comfort in setting up the space herself. No expensive trinkets, no clutter, just pale colors, clean air, and a deep sense of calm. The only decoration, that same white rose, now pressed between the pages of a book. Dima came to visit as soon as he heard. They sat together on her new sofa bed, the silence between them warm and familiar. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked softly, eyes full of concern. "More than okay." She smiled gently. "For the first time in ages, I can really breathe." "You know," Dima said, turning his mug slowly in his hands, "I thought I'd be shocked, but I'm not." Irina looked at him surprised. "It was that obvious, Mom," he said. Quietly, you flinched every time he walked into a room. You always went quiet when he was near. He hesitated and you stopped laughing. "I can't remember the last time I heard your real laugh." Irina felt tears sting her eyes. Dima, her son, her boy, had seen through everything. He understood far more than she'd ever imagined. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have left sooner." "Hey, come on," Dima gently wrapped his arms around her shoulders. "You left when you were ready, and I'm proud of you, really." They talked late into the night, and in the morning Dima left for the capital, leaving his mother with a lighter heart. He was on her side and that gave her strength. Victor kept calling, sometimes begging her to come back, sometimes threatening to take everything, but Irina stayed calm, firm. Her decision had been made. There was no going back. The divorce papers had already been filed. The court would handle the division of property. Her ex-mother-in-law flooded her with guilt-ridden speeches, accusing her of tearing the family apart. But now, those words bounced right off her. They couldn't touch her anymore. Money, though that was still a problem. The savings barely covered the down payment on her small apartment. Finding work was proving harder than she expected. Despite her experience, she had no official employment history, and at her age, companies often chose younger, shinier candidates. On the 14th morning of her new life, her phone rang. An unfamiliar number lit up the screen. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Irina, it's Andriy Savin." His voice was calm and confident, just as she remembered. Her heart skipped, but she held herself together. "How, Andriy, how's Stockholm?" "Rainy and chilly," he chuckled, "but productive. I got back yesterday and thought, remember we talked about getting coffee?" Irina smiled. "I remember. You said you'd be back in 2 weeks." "Exactly," he said, with a smile in his voice. "And I've got a bit of time today. Want to meet? There's a great little cafe near Chisty Prudi." She glanced at the clock. Her day was wide open. The next job interview wasn't until tomorrow, 2 o'clock, she suggested. "Perfect. I'll send you the address." After hanging up, Irina sat in silence for a moment, surprised at the flutter of nerves in her chest. It wasn't as if she hadn't spoken to men in the last 10 years. Victor had colleagues, business partners, family, friends. But this was different. This was her first time meeting a man, just the two of them since she left her husband, and something inside her wouldn't stop repeating, "This isn't just any man. This is Andriy, the one who once gave her books, who admired the way her mind worked." "Don't be ridiculous," she told herself firmly. "It's just coffee, a professional catch-up." The cafe was cozy, peaceful. Andriy was already there, sitting by the window, scrolling through a tablet. When she walked in, he looked up and his smile was so warm, so genuine, that she couldn't help smiling back. "You look amazing," he said, standing to greet her. She wore a simple blue sheath dress, barely any makeup, and yet somehow those words made her feel beautiful. "Thank you," she said, sitting down. "You look good too. The Swedish climate clearly suits you." Andriy smiled. "The Scandinavian lifestyle is good for the soul, less stress, more time for yourself and the people who matter." They ordered coffee and dessert. The conversation flowed like no time had passed at all. 10 years melted away in minutes. Andriy told her about his business, a chain of eco-friendly stores thriving in Sweden and Finland. Now, they were preparing to expand into Russia. "The idea's simple," he explained, sketching on a napkin. "We work directly with the producers, only high-quality goods, minimal environmental impact. Then we build a logistics chain that keeps prices low." Irina listened intently, asked precise questions, even offered ideas. With every passing minute, Andriy watched her with growing admiration. "I don't get it," he finally said, leaning back in his chair. "How does someone with a mind like yours, sharp, strategic, stay out of the game for 10 years? She froze for a moment. His tone wasn't judgmental, it was genuine curiosity. "I wasn't just sitting at home," she said quietly, firmly. "I used to manage my husband's accounting, draft business plans, even handled negotiations when he was too busy to attend. In essence, I worked like a full-time employee, just without a title, without recognition." Andriy shook his head slowly. "You know, in Sweden you could sue for something like that." Irina gave a half smile. "We're not in Sweden, and besides, it's not that simple. There were feelings, a bond, our son." "I understand," Andriy nodded. "But things have changed now, haven't they?" Irina looked up at him, caught off guard. "How do you know?" "Victor called me," Andriy answered plainly. "Accused me of stealing his wife." It was enlightening. A flush of embarrassment crept up Irina's cheeks. "Oh God, I'm sorry. He's impossible." "Hey," Andriy placed his hand gently over hers. "It's okay. I made it clear to him his accusations don't hold water. Still, I was surprised to hear you two split." Irina let out a long breath. It was a hard decision, but the right one. "So what now? Any plans?" Andriy took a sip of his coffee, watching her closely. "I'm job hunting." She shrugged. "At my age and with no official experience, it's not easy. I've been to a few interviews. Nothing yet." Andriy tapped his fingers thoughtfully on the table. "You know, I might have an idea." She looked at him, curious. "I'm looking for a financial director for our Russian branch. Someone who understands the local market, gets the mindset of the consumer, someone who knows their way around the numbers." Irina froze. "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an interview," he clarified, calm and sincere. "A fair one. If you're the right fit, the job is yours with competitive pay, benefits, and real growth potential. If not, we part as friends, and I'll help you find something else." but I don't have a formal resume. No official track record. You've got the knowledge, he countered. The hands-on experience. As for paperwork, there are fast-track programs, certification courses. I can help you with that. Irina stared at him, overwhelmed. This man, someone she hadn't seen in over a decade, was offering her something she never imagined. A fresh start. Why? She asked softly. Why are you helping me? Andrew took a moment, choosing his words. Do you remember our last economics seminar? The professor gave us a complex case study. You were the only one who cracked it. Even the grad students missed it. That day I thought to myself, this is someone I'd want to work with. I guess I'm just acting on that thought now. There was no flattery in his tone, no hidden agenda, just honesty. It warmed something deep inside her. When can I start the interview? She asked, her voice steadier now. Andrew smiled. How about now? I can show you our development plan for the Russian market, and you give me your thoughts. He pulled a folder from his briefcase and spread the documents across the table. For the next 2 hours, they were immersed in charts, numbers, and forecasts. Irina asked sharp questions, suggested revisions, pointed out possible pitfalls. And with every minute, her voice grew more confident. Her eyes lit up with renewed fire. Do you see this? She said, leaning in and pointing. There's a potential logistics issue right here. She pointed at one of the charts. If we reroute and use these warehouses instead, we could cut costs by at least 15%. Andrew stared at her with open admiration. Incredible. I've been working on this plan for 3 months and you saw a solution I missed in just 2 hours. Irina gave a modest smile. Fresh eyes, she said quietly. No, Andrew shook his head. It's not just that. You've got a brilliant mind. His tone grew more serious. And I want you on my team. Official offer, salary, stock, options, benefits, everything you deserve. Irina felt her heart skip a beat. Are you sure? Aren't you worried Victor might retaliate? He could cause trouble for your business. Let him try. Andrei shrugged calmly. I'm not afraid of fair competition. And what about unfair competition? I've got resources too. His voice was steady, confident. So are you in? Irina looked down at the butterfly, brooch still pinned to her lapel, a butterfly in amber beauty frozen in time. But she wasn't frozen anymore. She was ready to spread her wings and fly. Yes, she said, her voice firm. I'm in. Andrew smiled broadly. Fantastic. Then I say we celebrate. How about dinner tonight? Irina hesitated. Dinner sounded less professional than coffee is. This a business dinner or? Andrew's answer was gentle, without pressure. If you don't mind, it's just dinner. We're colleagues now, but that doesn't mean we can't be more someday if you ever feel like it. Irina felt her cheeks flush. At 40, she was blushing like a teenager at the simplest of invitations. I'm not ready for a relationship, she admitted. Too much has happened. I understand, Andrew nodded. And I'm not in a rush. Just dinner, conversation, maybe a little wine, nothing more. No pressure. She looked at him calm, confident, not a trace of manipulation or hidden motive. He was simply offering a choice, and ready to accept whatever answer she gave. All right, she smiled. Dinner sounds lovely. As they left the cafe and walked through the autumn park, leaves swirled around them like golden confetti, turning the evening into something quietly magical. Andrew talked about Stockholm, his dreams for the future, the kind of business he wanted to build. Irina listened and felt something stir within her. A long-forgotten spark, the thrill of new beginnings. She paused for a moment, gazing down at the red and yellow carpet of fallen leaves beneath her feet. What is it? Andrew asked. Irina smiled. I was just thinking, how strange life is. Not long ago, I thought the most exciting part of my life was behind me, and now it feels like everything's just beginning. Andrew looked at her with warmth in his eyes. You're 40. It's the start of your best years, Irina. I believe that. And in that moment, Irina realized something. For the first time in a very long time, she was truly happy. The butterfly had finally broken free from the amber and was ready to fly into a new life full of promise, wonder, and endless possibilities. If this story touched you, leave a like and subscribe. It means the world to us. Share your thoughts in the comments. That's the best way to keep us inspired to bring you more stories every day. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and above all, stay happy.